close that. Let me open up my project. That's what we're working on. I'm doing too much to the program. There we go. So this was nothing, so I can just delete this one. Okay. So I'm going to make a new composition, and I'm going to call this one circle wipe. I'm doing it to the same stuff. So everything we've done so far for this project, we've done to the same settings. 1920 by 1080. The frame rate, 2997. The duration, remember what our duration was. 3 seconds, right? So 300. Something to pay attention to also, I'm kind of glossing over it, but this background color here. If this is black, it's black for us to see it, but it doesn't mean that it actually is black. And what I mean by that is, let's say we took one composition and another composition and we put those two together, the black wouldn't show, it would be transparent, okay? So just be aware of that when we get into adding comps together. All right, so here's our circle comp. So what I'm going to do is, instead of doing a new solid, that's what we've done before, we've created a new solid and then started off with some sort of shape there. I'm going to use my shape layer to do that. So I'm going to go to Ellipse Tool and double click it. And then I'm going to change the size of my ellipse to be not that small. 150. Let's keep going a little bit further. Maybe 300. There we go. 300 by 300 seems like it's a good size. So I just expanded my ellipse path to get to the size so I can make it 300 by 300. Okay. So then I can just close that. Now here's where the extra bit is going to come in, something that is different than what we've done before. You can see this little arrow right here. This contents has an arrow right there saying add. We can add basically like effects to this thing. So if I go to the add arrow, there's a whole bunch of different things inside here that I could add. So the one that's going to help us with this is the trim path, okay? So just watch me do mine, take notes on it. And then what the trim path is going to do is, as I open this up, I have a start, an end, and an offset. So watch how I can click on this offset and drag it. Oops, sorry, not the offset. I can click on the end and drag it. And what it's doing is it's adjusting that path, okay? So imagine here, pointer, there we go. Imagine here we have a path starting at the top and coming down. What we're doing is we're telling it where that path is going to end. So right now it's ending right there. As I make this bigger, it's ending right there, okay? So imagine if I go to 50%, which is what that number is, it's 50% of that. It goes halfway around. Yes, sir.
What determines the direction of the sweep?
When it originally was created, that's what it is defined by, okay?
Direction you click and drag to?
When I originally clicked it. Eventually you can use the pen tool to create stuff. Okay, so on this circle, it's defaulted that that top point is the starting point. Now we could just rotate it if we wanted to start in a different direction. Okay, so now this doesn't help us too much to do this little wipe like this. I'm going to take the fill off. So I click on the fill, take it off, and then I just take the stroke up. Okay, so now the stroke is huge, and now as I do this, it makes a little bit more sense. Okay, very cool. Now we can take this and make it even bigger, like, I don't think I want to go that big. Let's go to that, there, 160. And then I'm going to go back to my ellipse path and just make this a bit smaller. There we go. Okay, so whatever number I choose here, 160, I'm going to make the size also 160. Okay. So whatever size I chose for this ellipse path, I made that it. Now I'll show you why I did that. If I go smaller or bigger in size, I have a hole in the center, right? If I go smaller, like this, watch what happens to the path. See, it's like bypassed it, right? So the path is actually like overlapping itself. It could be a cool effect, but not something I'm going after. So whatever number I decided for the stroke, that's what number is going to go here. And I only have to worry about this on the first one. All the other ones, it doesn't matter. So we start off the same way. I know what I'm going to be animating. In this case, I'm animating this end path. I go to the beginning. I set a keyframe. I scooch up a bit. I set it to 100. And there's my other keyframe. All right. So what am I going to do next? Easy ease, right? We got to ease the keys in. So I'm going to click on end. I'm going to right click on my keyframes and go to easy ease. You can hit F9, remember, I can't. Then I'm going to go to my graph editor, make sure this is a speed graph, and just control the speed of this. So I want this to come in quick at the beginning and then slow down. So now if I watch this, I get that. All right, so that's pretty cool. So now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to duplicate it, scoot it underneath the other one, and scale it up. And then I'll just change the stroke color to something else just so I can see it. I'll duplicate it again. Oops. Scoot it below the other one, change the stroke color, I can see it, and then scale it up. Duplicate this again, scoot it below the other one, change the stroke color, and scale it up. And do that again. Scale it up, change the stroke color, and you get the idea of what I'm doing there. And I think I'm going to scale all of these up just so they fill this entire screen. Maybe this last couple I'll scale up a bit more. Go like that. And scale number 4 down a bit. And then number 3 up a bit. There we go. Now on the very last one, 5, it might be hard to see, but it's barely hitting this edge here, okay? So I can crank up this edge width or the stroke width just so it covers it. All right, so now I have this. All right, so what should my next step be in this? Offset them. So just grab and scoot them over. And I'm doing this backwards, like before. What we did was we added the top one moved over. This one, the bottom ones are moving over, okay, just because it's behind the other one. And I'm actually going to give this a little bit more room just so I can see it a little bit better. There we go. That's kind of cool. Okay. Now once I get to this point, remember we always want to be having a transition. So I never want to just leave it like this because it's not a transition. It just goes to this thing and stays there. So at some point I have to go and set a keyframe on my scale for the first one, go up a little bit, and then scale it up huge. That way I've transitioned from one color to a different color. Okay? We don't want this to just stop here, right? Because that looks kind of funny. So I just set a scale keyframe on my first one, that tiny white one in the center, and then that would go up to that. And then everything else would be the same. Make these easy ease, adjust my speed, oops. These can probably be scooted back a little bit. Don't be afraid to tweak stuff. See, it just hangs out a little bit too long. Let me hit U on this one. Yeah, see. A little bit further back. That's cool. Maybe a little bit further back like that. There we go. Okay? So we always want to tweak things. We always want to look at them. Like I said, even if it helps making a little sound effect while you're doing it so you can kind of visualize it, it definitely does help. Okay. Now here's, I chose for this specific one, I chose grayscale colors. I chose white, grading out to a black color or a dark gray color because I want to show something else in here. Okay. So one of the things that may happen is we may want to create these things and we may want to adjust coloration later on. Okay. If we choose colors that may look good together, it may not look good to adjust those on an overall basis. And what I mean by that, as we looked at before, the color, where'd you go? Extensions, color themes. We looked before at these color themes here, and once they realize that they want to open, some of them are neat color schemes. Like these 4 or 5 colors do go good, really good together, but they may not go good together if I started to adjust some of the colors. Like if I started to adjust the saturation of all of them at the same time, or adjust their lightness, or shift their hue, it may come out kind of funky looking. Just open up. There we go. Okay, so something like this, that may look fine like that. But when we get into something like this, or something like that, those colors may be just too far kind of away from each other to adjust overall. Okay, and what I'm doing here with this gray is I'm creating these colors that I could adjust overall. Okay, so on 1 or 2 of your transitions, what I want you to do is make an adjustment layer. Okay, so an adjustment layer, does anyone know what an adjustment layer is in Photoshop? Anyone at all? Adjustment layer? Go ahead. Yes. Yeah.
It just affects like the coloring, the lighting, and all that. You like adjust your grass, you adjust your.
Right. It's basically a layer, and then it affects everything underneath it. So whatever you do to that one layer will affect everything underneath it. Okay? So in this case, I have this adjustment layer. Now the thing that makes it an adjustment layer is this little dude right here. Okay? Once that guy is on a layer, then he's going to be affecting it. Now it's basically like a blank layer, so we can't actually see something on that layer itself. It's just these effects that we're going to add. So if I go under Effect and I go under Color Correction, there's a whole bunch of different ways that I could correct or adjust coloration here. So one of them is tinting. So if I go down to Tint, I can say I want to take my black values and map them to, just for fun, let's map it to this dark blue. And then I can take my white values and I can map it to, I drop the same blue, and I'm just going to pick a brighter value for it. Okay, so I've taken that gray, kind of ugly gray color, and now I can repurpose it and use it for my blue composition that I have. Let's say I don't want that. Let's say I want to do something different. I'll go back under Color Correction. I'll go to Hue and Saturation. That's one that you probably used before in Photoshop. You probably never used tint in Photoshop. And I can say Colorize. And Colorize is neat because what it does is we're basically picking one color from this Colorize hue, and then we're adjusting that one color, and then we can choose saturation and lightness. So as I click and drag this, look at all the different colors I can get. There's green. And then I can adjust the saturation, and I can adjust the lightness. Okay? So very quickly I can take something that was created for one purpose and apply it to other things. Okay? So that's what I'm saying with some of those other colors, like these ones, these may not blend nicely to something like that. All right? So we just have to be aware of that as we create our colors. So that's why I chose that grayscale image to it. Now if I turn this hue and saturation off, you see that the effect just goes away. If I move one of my layers above it, well, the white one's not going to do anything. If I move one of my layers above it, you'll see that that doesn't get affected anymore because it's above that adjustment layer. Okay? So on 1 or 2 of yours, add an adjustment layer and show that you understand the concept of creating a grayscale image or grayscale color scheme and then using an adjustment layer to correct the colors. Okay? And just so you can see a couple more of these, because there's a lot of fun ones in here. Let's see, There's one called Colorama. I think it's still in here. There it is, Colorama. Ooh, psychedelic. And what this allows you to do is it says, I want to take certain things. Okay, so this is more advanced than the hue and saturation. Hue and saturation is basically just adjusting those colors. This one is taking the intensity and adjusting the intensities, or the colors based off the intensity. So I could say, let's take the red. They're all the same right now, but take the red, the green, or the blue, or the hue, or any of these. If I took the hue, they would all be the same because they're literally all the same hue. It's just there's no saturation. If I go to saturation, they're all the same saturation. If I go to lightness, there we go. They're adjusting the lightness. Then I would go to output cycle, and it's picking these colors. So at the top of the cycle is red, then yellow, then green, then this, then this, then this. Or I can use a preset, Colorize, fancy, or clay. Okay, so now we're actually picking different colors and applying those basically to the different circles. So it's a neat way, again, to be able to do this and basically repurpose what we've already created. Colorama is one of the fun ones. Now you will see a line there. I think it's just my display, yeah. And then I'm going to turn on also motion blur. Oops, I hit the right one. Ooh, fun stuff. Cool. All right, so that's how we can adjust the colors on this. All right, so now what I want to show is how we can repurpose some of these things. Okay, so let's go to one of these types of effects here. Okay, so let's say this. All right, that's kind of a neat one. So it goes whoop, and they disappear. So I'm going to make a new composition, composition new. I'm going to call it the Brady Bunch. Squares. 3 seconds, good. Okay, so what I need to do is I'm going to create the animation that we just saw for one of those. So ignoring all the grids that we saw, I'm going to make one. And I'm just going to use either a rectangle tool or I can use just a solid. Same shape, I'm not doing anything fancy. So I can just create that. I'll get rid of the stroke. Oops, that's not getting rid of the stroke. That's getting rid of the stroke. There we go. And I'll go to the fill and we'll make it, there we go, right there. All right. So it looks like it starts off really small and then it scales up and rotates at the same time, right? So I'm going to go to my scale and rotate. I'll go to frame 17 or so and lock these in. I'll rewind it. I'll rotate it, that way it looks good, -90, and I'll scale it down to 0. So now I get like that. Okay, and then it stays up for a couple frames. I'll set some keyframes, go up a little bit more. I'll rotate it to +90, and then I'll scale it back down to 0. Now, some things I could do to adjust that and make it a little bit more interesting, break up the X and the Y. So the scales are not scaling up at the same time. Maybe they're scaling this way and then out. That's kind of a neat way to show that. It's going to bother me if it's not better because it looks kind of horrible. So let me just do that, okay? So here's a quick way to do that. We haven't really discussed this too much, but anything that has two values like this, we can separate those dimensions. So if I right click on here and I go up to separate dimensions, what? Why aren't you separating? Scale, right click, separate dimensions. I shouldn't have to. No, because I'm just separating the scale. It should separate the X and the Y. I'll just animate this separate anyway, different. There we go. So here I'm going to set my keyframe. I'm going to come up a little bit. I'll set this scale to 100. That's cool. I'll wait till it's like this. Let me go back to that one. If I don't set some other value here, it won't be visible because it's 0. So I have to set something there. So maybe I'll make this 5. Oh, that's way too much. 1. There we go. 1. All right. So now he goes, and then when he gets here, then he'll go. Oops. He'll go up to this and then be 100. There we go. And then when we start scaling down, we'll do the same thing. This will start here. This will shrink down to 1. And then over here, this will be 0. All right, so it's a bit more interesting than just what I had before. All right, so same thing. Even though I have a million keyframes here, the same thing applies. I still go through. I still go to my easy ease. I still go in here. Now with this, you can see how complicated this graph is. But we still do it, okay? And here's the easy way: is I grab all of them and then just drag that over. And drag that over. Cool. And I'll go to rotation, highlight all of it, drag it over. All right, pretty cool. All right, so that's our template. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to then repurpose this animation for all of those different squares that I have. Okay, so I'm going to go to my project window over here, and here's my Brady Bunch. I'm going to drop my circles in the comp so I don't get confused. Here's my Brady Bunch squares. I'm just going to rename this to be Brady Bunch single square. Cool. Then I'm going to drop this onto a new composition. So anytime you take something from up here and you drop it onto a new composition, what it does is it automatically makes a brand new composition that's the exact same size, resolution, and everything, and then it puts it right here. Okay? So basically imagine like in Photoshop you've grouped something and you want to take that group and drop it into another layer. That's what we did, or another composition or another file. So here's the exact same animation that we just had. Okay? But now this is basically like a flattened out version of it. So if I scale it, move it, and do whatever, it doesn't affect anything else we've already done. So if I hit S to scale, and I shrink this down, and I just go and move it over here, you'll see that we get a little version of that. Pretty cool. So now all we have to do is just duplicate it. So I'm going to go to where it's kind of square. I'll scale it up a little bit more. We could do some fancy math here to figure out how many of these things would fit horizontally and vertically, but we'll just eyeball it.
So basically you compressed your original animation into one single thing?
Correct.
Okay, just double check.
Yep, and then this whole thing that we're doing here, imagine you had a character and they sang a song, right? You could take their mouth and put those on a separate comp. You can have their arms on a separate comp, their legs on a separate comp, and animate all these things individually, so it just makes your job a lot easier. I need to shrink everything down just a smare right there. And then just scoot that over, scoot that over. One might fit there and one might fit there, okay? We'll just pretend it does fit, even if it doesn't fit, we won't tell anyone. All right, so this one I will duplicate and scoot him over. So close, so close. Duplicate him over. There we go. Grab this whole line, duplicate them, scoot it down. Now there are, I believe, where are those things at? Transform. Maybe not. Think of a different program. Oh no, you would have to download it, yeah. There are scripts and plugins we could download that help us lay things out. We don't need to do that right now. All right, so there we go. Okay, and then all we have to do is go through these and maybe offset them a little bit. There we go. Okay, and then to get different colors, we can just go to each one of these and just do a little color correction on it. So with this one, let's say I went to hue and saturation. Let me make sure I can see it. There he is. Easy way, just hit colorize, and then you can slide this to whatever color you want. That's cool. And then I can just copy this hue and saturation, paste it on all the other ones, and then just go to each one and then slide that over. Click on this one, slide it over. Click on this one, slide it over. Obviously you can pick a color scheme here. I'm just kind of randomly doing this just so we can see the effect. And cool. Okay. Now here's the tricky part with this. If one of these guys, we want motion blur on there, those actually aren't moving. Okay? There is no actual motion here. This comp stays right there. It's kind of like we're watching a video. Okay? So if I want to do any motion blur, I have to jump back to my original, click that on, and then go back to this one. And then we'll see that we have motion blur. Okay? But I only had to click it on for one item, just the first original one. Now here's the purpose of this. It's gorgeous. Let's say we didn't like the animation. Let's say instead of it going clockwise, we wanted it to go counterclockwise. So all we have to do is jump back to the original. And right here it goes -90. So I'm going to set this to +90. And at the very end it goes to +90. I'm going to set this to -90. So now it should go counterclockwise. And it does. Okay? So I've just changed the whole animation on this one. That animation will trickle into this one. Okay? So now I have two of these. Now let's say I wanted to get even fancier, and I said, okay, well what I want to do is some I want to go counterclockwise, some I want to go clockwise. Okay? Because I want to go fancy. So I'm going to go back to my project settings here. I'm going to open this up so we can see it. This one I'm going to rename to the square, Brady Bunch squares. Okay, I'm going to take my single square and I'm going to right click and, oops, I'm just going to click on it and hit Control D to duplicate it. So I'm going to rename this one to be single square clockwise. And I'm going to right click on this one, single square counterclockwise. Okay, so if I go to my clockwise one, I'm just going to reset this to -90, go to the end, reset this one to +90. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now let's go back to our Brady Bunch squares. So this is where all of these are at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to randomly click on these. It's not going to be terribly random. There we go. That should be good. So I've clicked on the ones that I want to replace. I'm going to hold down Alt and drag this onto one of them. And you'll see that it replaced all of those. So now if I rewind it, you'll see that now I have two different animations going on. Now the trick to this one too, here's a cheat to that. Here's one that goes clockwise, right? Let's say I want this one to go counterclockwise. I'm just going to go to my scale and just make it negative. So now he goes counterclockwise. Okay? So instead of me doing that, I could have done that too. But the purpose is that you can take your original animation, duplicate it, have different things going on with it. Okay? Whatever I want to do to this one, it's just a matter of coming in here and updating it. Let's say I want this scale here to happen a little bit quicker. Let's set that to 1 right there. This goes. There we go. And then I'm going to take my scale and maybe start to scale this back already. Go right here. There we go. All right, now I go back to this one, and it will update just the ones. It won't update all of them because there's two actual comps, right? There's this one that I just tweaked, which is a clockwise, and then I have my counterclockwise, which I didn't tweak. Okay? So one of your page transitions, I want you to do this to it also. I want you to create a clip, you call that a clip, of an animation that you then drop into a composition and you copy it over and over and over again. Okay? Cool. All right, let's see if there's anything else in there that we can